So, Corvus Belli have taken the decision to re-release faction paint sets for Infinity. Kind of like the ones we've all known and loved for years now. But this time round, they've gone with Army Painter over Vallejo. Let's talk about it. Now look, Vallejo probably aren't at the height of their popularity at the moment, but one thing that's always been kind of undeniable is the quality of the Infinity paint sets that they used to put together. However, for the relaunch of the paint sets, Corvus Belli have decided to go with Army Painter this time, which is kind of interesting. Because, well, Army Painter have always been regarded as kind of a budget brand, offering middle-of-the-road quality, but at very good prices. But, well, that seems to be a bit less the case these days, doesn't it? With Army Painter working really hard to improve their brand image, and, if the response to the Fnatic paint range is to be believed, to up their quality game too. So the new boxes do follow a similar format to the old ones, except now they contain 10 paints instead of the original 8. Let's see if that does us any favours. And you do also get a painting guide by Minotauro Studio, an incredible painter. And you still get a exclusive limited edition miniature. The price, however, has gone up kind of dramatically. I remember the old ones being about 30 quid in the UK, £30. These new ones are £40. That's a 33%, because I can math, increase. And the other sort of obvious on the surface thing is the omission of a brush, which seems weird when switching to Army Painter, because whilst Vallejo don't really make paintbrushes, Army Painter makes some alright paintbrushes, so why not include one with a starter set? But look, I don't want to bag on this product before I've even tried it, so I am going to take this exclusive Kaisotsu Paramedic from the JSA paint set. I'm going to paint it up according to the guide, and then I'm going to give you some more levelled and considered opinions on what I think of the product. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I followed the provided guide and I painted along like a good boy, following each step in turn. Now, these guides largely use exactly the same methodology as the old ones used to, which is to say the same method I also happen to use in most of my painting, aka the workup method. This principally involves starting with your shadow colour and then working up in layers through your midtone and eventually to your highlight. Now, one of the key features of this methodology is it does involve a lot of mixing. You want smooth transitions between each colour, so most of the time you're going to be taking the previous colour that you just applied, mixing in a bit of a lighter colour to lift it a step, and then applying that to a smaller area, and so on to create a smooth layered build-up. And the guidebook gives you quite a few examples of this, actually, with a cold greeny grey, more of a neutral grey-white, some warm kind of black greys, and a lovely red workup. Enough to give you a reasonable bit of experience with the method if you're not used to working this way, and teach you a really useful way of painting. Now, the skin tones in the guide do revert to the more typical base wash highlight method that you're probably used to if you've, say, painted a lot of Games Workshop miniatures, which was actually something I found kind of weird, because in my experience, the workup method actually kind of shines most, like one of the best things to use it for is skin tones, where it's a lot easier to work in all the little dynamics and interesting things, and where washes tend to often place shadows in places where you don't really want them. But nonetheless, the guide is comprehensive, at least, and does take you all the way through from start to finish of the miniature. So if you followed it to the letter like I did, you should end up with something, some kind of JSA Kaisotsu Paramedic that looks roughly like the example on the box. So, I followed the book. I painted the mini, and, well, I do now feel like this puts me in the best position I could be in to give you a fair and honest review of this paint set. And, well, it's It's not great. Now, the thumbnail for this video was probably a pretty strong hint of this, but my report on the experience of using this set does unfortunately have quite a few negatives. So many, in fact, that I considered not making this video, and this is the third script rewrite for this video because, well, I don't really like publishing negative reviews of things, and I especially don't like publishing negative reviews of things that are made by literally my favourite brands. But, well, the thing is, because I adore Corvus Belli, because I've always supported them so strongly, it kind of felt wrong to not put an honest review of the product out into the world. And so, yeah, I kind of need to chat some shit about this set. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start with the bad, get it out of the way, and then at least we can end on the good, because it's not all bad news. So the first issue I hit was at the very start of the guide. If you ignore my reading finger here, you can see that the first line actually instructs us to prime the model with Army Painter black spray paint. Not only is this a product that doesn't come with the set, but if you're a new painter, then that's probably something you wouldn't know and therefore wouldn't find out until you've already got this set home and opened it. Now that's a pretty crushingly shit thing for a first-time painter to begin with, but on top of that, this could have just been a guide to brush priming using the black paint that is in the set. Not only would this be a more customer-friendly experience, but it would actually, again, teach another vital skill that a lot of people overlook. There's an assumption that you need rattle cans or airbrushes to prime your miniatures, and, well, that just isn't true and never has been. But stuff like this is kind of infuriating because it's kind of like instead of opting to create a customer-friendly experience, the first paragraph of this guide was used as a sales pitch for another product. My second and sadly biggest issue is just the handling and quality of the paints in general. I'll be honest, it is really quite hard to convey this through video, so what I'm about to say is maybe going to require just a little bit of trust from you that I, know what I'm talking about. But I just felt all the way through the process that these paints were just fighting me. And it's worth pointing out, I paint primarily with Vallejo and AK, the 3rd gen AK. Now those are two lines of paints that have quite similar properties, quite similar behaviour, they're quite similar colour ranges. Switching between one and the other is really not a problem at all. And so at least some of the problem here could just be how different these paints are to what I normally paint with. But they are so incredibly thick, some of them like verging on toothpastey. And that means that you have to put a ton of water in them to get them to a workable consistency. The problem I found is that once I got them down to that workable consistency, the coverage and durability was really bad. They would tear very easily, or they would just cover in a really unexpected way that's nothing like how I'm used to paints handling. And it's not like I only ever paint with AK and Vallejo. There are plenty of other lines that I dip into now and again, and this is a thing that I've only seen with these Fanatic paints. This is super frustrating if you are a painter that shoots for a higher standard of quality, but the more worrying thing is if you're a beginner picking up this set, because, well, it's just going to teach you things that aren't really true or normal for how paint handles and how you need to work with it. And as soon as you switch to any other brand, it's going to feel really weird. And this is sort of a lose-lose, because not only does it kind of confuse me why Army Painter went this way with their new formula, but it also kind of concerns me that Corvus Belli chose a brand like this that's so different from what they've previously championed and what a lot of their incredible box art has been painted with, at least presumably. Now beyond this, we are getting into some more minor niggles now, so thankfully I can chill out a little bit, because, yeah, it's quite upsetting talking shit about a brand you love. Now, the whole skin section in the book is just a bit of a mess. As you can see here, the colour difference between the example in the manual and the physical model is huge. In this step, I've just painted one colour, and yeah, it looks nothing like the example in the book. In addition, the manual asks you to make a wash for the skin, but gives literally no explanation of what that is or how to do it. And this also leads back to another really silly thing that I noticed with this set, which is the actual choice of skin tones that they include. Because you see, you get a set of 3, and presumably by the workup method, that would be the shadow colour, the midtone, and the highlight. But the darkest one is never used in the skin instructions at all. Instead of this being the base and working up through the skin tones, which when you look at them seems to make sense, we're instead instructed to use the middle one, then make a wash, and then highlight back up. Now, not only is this a weird change of methodology right near the end of the guide where we've been painting one way and now we're suddenly painting another, but the only thing that this deepest skin tone actually ends up getting used for is mixing with black to make warm greys. So it begs the question, why couldn't we just have a warm grey in the set? Or anything else other than this? Or just consistent methodology throughout? Look, I'm supposed to be calming down here. I'm sorry. Let's carry on. In fact, do you know what? Let's talk positives, because there are some positives, and I think that's a bit nicer to end on. First of all, the 2 reds that are included in the set are gorgeous. They both handle really well, they are thinner out of the bottle, they cover really nicely, they're just all-round great paints, and they've actually made it into my regular rotation behind me of paints that I use all the time. As well as this, the illustrations in the book, colour grading aside, are at least really large and clear, and that's really nice because it means that you can see, especially as a beginner, where the strokes are placed, especially like highlight placement, for example. So they're very good for following in that respect. I also love continuing to include a little exclusive miniature in the paint set. That's always been a really fun thing. This isn't a miniature that anyone desperately needs. It's usually like a paramedic or a forward observer, something that pretty much everyone just proxies like a normal light infantry for anyway. So you're not really missing out if you don't buy the set, but it's kind of nice to feel like if you did, you got something special for buying the set. And I guess finally, the most important pro of the set, you can, with these 10 paints and this guide, follow along to create something that looks very similar to the box art. And well, at the end of the day, if something like that is what you're looking for and these are the paints you end up with, you're not going to fail in that mission. Yes, if you're used to other brands, you're probably going to find these paints hard to work with. Yes, if you're a first-time painter, this set is in some ways a bit of a nightmare and will possibly teach you some bad habits or maybe leave you a bit confused. But what it will do is get you painting and get you results that you recognise against the pictures that you're seeing. And that is really awesome. If you've already bought this set or bought into the Fanatic paint range in general, don't feel like you have to defend your decisions and don't feel bad for doing so. Ultimately, if you are getting results you like and you are enjoying using those paints, then you have bought the right thing for you. I can only speak from me, a sample size of 1, and whilst I do have a lot of experience, using experience as a basis for authority is often not the most reliable way. My job as a teacher, as a content creator, as a professional painter is to give you the most honest and clear insight I can into a particular subject so as to arm you with some perspective that you might wish to use to inform your opinion. But you're by no means ever obliged to do so. Ultimately, Infinity probably is still the best miniature range on the market. Ultimately, JSA are still one of the coolest factions within that range. The game is super fun and super competitive. It has a new edition now. Look, no one really loses if I think this paint set is a bit shit. But it is a bit shit. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.